Hi, I'm Andy Aledort, and welcome to In Deep with Randy Rhoads. In this video lesson, I'll be teaching about all the licks, riffs, and scale patterns that make up Randy Rhoads' soloing style. We're going to get into some fretboard tapping also. I'll also be teaching you how to play the classic Randy Rhoads song, Flying High Again. One of the scales that was an absolute staple for him when it came to soloing is a scale that everyone uses in rock and metal. It's probably the most commonly used scale for soloing for guitar, and it's minor pentatonic. And one of the things about Randy Rhoads is he made a complete study of all the modes, which are the different scales that can be built from the major scale. And in putting solos together, he would combine minor pentatonic and the blues scale, which is the next most commonly used scale for rock and metal, with specific modes, like minor modes like the Dorian mode or Aeolian. So let's start with minor pentatonic, and we're going to talk about some of the typical patterns that he would play. And one of the things about Randy Rhoads, he was a guitar teacher for a long time. So the way I'm going to show you the scales and the patterns is based on the way Randy would teach these things to his students. And then we'll take these ideas and we're going to look at them in terms of how he would utilize them when he played some of his solos. So let's start with minor pentatonic, and we're going to start with A minor pentatonic in 5th position. A lot of guitar players already know this, but I'm going to show it to you anyway. That's a very common scale. Everyone uses it. And one of the ways Randy would teach it to his students, he would teach them to play triplets. So let's start by descending. We're going to play 3-note patterns, and each 3-note pattern is going to begin 1 note lower in the scale. So what that means is if we start with the highest note in this position, a C, and we play a descending 3-note pattern using the notes from the scale, the next 3-note pattern starts 1 note lower in the scale. So if you continue that process, you get this. Now let's go up the scale. Same thing, alternate picking. If you try that with pull-offs, going down, what happens is if you have 2 notes sounding on one string, the first note is going to be picked, and the second note is going to be sounded with a pull-off. So in this position, you get a repeated pattern of fretted note, pull-off, fretted note, and then 2 fretted notes and a pull-off. And that's just how it works in this position. So here it is. So slowly. If we move up, then we're going to use hammer-ons. Same deal. If you have 2 notes on one string, first note is picked and the second note is hammered onto. So we get the same exact thing that happened on the way down. A good thing to do is to start the lower one the same way we started the higher one, meaning we're going to start with the pull-off. So that way you get the sound of the kind of leading the way, and that's played like this. So what I'm doing is I'm just doing the one pull-off and then picking again. You could hammer both notes. And that way you have more hammer-ons in the lick. Now let's move this to a different position. We're going to use an extended position of A minor pentatonic, and that position is played like this. do descending triplets using this scale position, you would get this. You could use pull-offs and slides as well. Now let's do the same thing on the way up, triplets and using alternate picking. And then you can combine hammer-ons with that and slides. Another thing Randy would teach his students, and he would also use this in his solos, was to take pieces of those triplet patterns and repeat them, and then ascend or descend. I'll show you what I mean. So one place you can do that in this key, using A minor pentatonic, is you would play in a repeated pattern. Or use hammers. So there I'm hammering, and then I'm using a hammer pull-off on the A string. Now we have a similar shape in A minor pentatonic on the A and the D string, 2 frets higher. So again, you can pick them all. You can hammer the first one and pick all the others. Or use as many hammers and pulls as you can. And this is very useful for building up your chops and your dexterity for creating a legato smooth sound. Let's move that up one pair of strings in the same position. Again, this is A minor pentatonic. All picking. The hammer on the first pair. And then as many hammers and pulls as you can use. Now here's another pattern you like to teach your students. It's very similar. Instead of starting on the lower note in this shape, we're going to start here. All right, so this is all using a 6th string root of a minor pentatonic. It's important that you move these positions over to 5th string root minor pentatonic too, because of course you're not just going to be playing things with 6th string root. Since we were doing everything in A here with a 6th string root, I recommend that you move these to different parts of the neck. Play it in G, play it in F, play it in D, you know, all over the place. If we move this over to a 5th string root minor pentatonic, let's use E. Here's the scale. Using the previous pattern, you'd have this. Should have practiced that descending as well. All right, now let's take the same idea of sticking with a particular scale and a position, but instead of using triplets, let's use 4-note groups. That's another thing that you'd hear Randy do. So here's what I'm talking about. If we're using A minor pentatonic in 5th position, and you played a 4-note descending pattern, that would be the first pattern. And then the second one would be a lot of guitar players, particularly rock guitar players, like to switch to a spread out stretch so that you can use your ring finger throughout. And then next one. Next one. Next one. All right, so be sure to take these ideas and move them into the blues scale. So if we were to play the A blues scale in the same position that we've been using, if we played triplets descending, you'd have another fun thing to do is take this blues scale and play fours with it, descending, just like we had done with threes. That would sound like this. As I mentioned, modes were very important to Randy, and he used them all the time in a lot of his solos. And what's cool is if you've learned your minor pentatonic scales and your blues scale, it's very easy to transfer the fingerings, the shapes, the patterns, and the general area where you play into a modal structure. So let's begin with A Dorian, and we're going to play it in this position. So the thing about the Dorian mode is we have a major sixth and a major second. So you should be very aware of that. The notes in the key of A, B, C, D, E, and then F sharp, G, and then it repeats. A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, major sixth. The other minor mode that he used most often is Aeolian. The only difference between Aeolian and Dorian is the sixth scale degree. For Aeolian, it's a flat six, F natural in the key of A, instead of F sharp. So that scale, ascending, would be like this. So if you played similar patterns in Aeolian, you would get this. So this is tough because we have that big stretch. So make sure you practice that in other positions as well. On a song like Crazy Train, you can hear Randy mixing the scales. He'll play a solo and he'll combine the blues scale with Aeolian. A typical kind of lick there would be something like this. One of the things Randy liked to do when he was using a modal approach was to play in sort of a very ornamental, sort of baroque classical style by adding a lot of hammer-ons and pull-offs. There's a classical technique known as a mordant, where you play a note and you go above the note, below the note, back to the note. And that kind of shape you'll hear that in Randy's solos all over the place. So if he were to play a lick utilizing the Aeolian mode, it wouldn't be unusual for him to play it like this. So what I'm trying to do is get those mordents in there, and what's kind of cool is, as you're coming down, you could have 3 descending notes in a row and then the mordent, and then 2 descending notes, and then the mordent. And that just happens because it's the way it goes in accordance with the way the scale falls on the fretboard. All right, let's wrap things up with a look at fretboard tapping. Some of Randy's greatest solos, like the solo on Flying High Again, features fretboard tapping. Now, if you're unfamiliar with the technique, which I doubt there's too many of you out there that are unfamiliar with fretboard tapping, but in case you are, a note is sounded with the pick hand by bringing a finger down onto the fretboard, in essence, tapping. Randy liked to use his middle finger when he tapped. And then generally what happens, there's 2 notes or more sounded with the fret hand. All right, if we tap a note at the 12th fret, and we're going to tap on the 12th fret across all the strings, we're going to pull off 2 notes with the fret hand. So what's happening is we're sounding these triads. That's why it sounds musical, because each tapped riff references a chord. The first riff is A minor, because it's the notes E, C, and E. The second one is E minor. The third one is a C chord, because it's G, E, and C. That's a C triad. And the next one's a G chord, because it's a G triad. D, B, and G. Then we go to D minor, back to A minor.